Okay, so I made sure to pick my words very carefully when naming the title. I'm sure you read the title and think that this is going to be a mostly negative review. I don't want it to be that way. I actually enjoyed Sun-KenRock, especially for the first 160 chapters. But there are a few elements to the story that I did not and can be met with criticism. Regardless, I recommend to check out the series for yourself and develop your own opinion. At the end of the day, this is manga, it's subjective, it's not that serious. Also, I want to make this as spoiler free as possible. No guarantees, I might slightly spoil some things here and there, especially in the ending. If you don't want to hear that, I recommend reading the story first and then coming back to this video. But let's get started. When Sun-KenRock comes to mind, usually the first thing people will talk about is the beautiful art. You've probably seen it all over Twitter, all over Instagram, the crazy double page spread of Ken going nuts. It's for good reason. The art is beautiful, it's detailed, it's extremely realistic, and at times looks worthy of a museum, to be honest. Boichi is extremely talented. He's on par with some of the best illustrators on the planet, like Takahiko Inoue and Kentaro Miura. I will say though, his art style definitely compares more to Inoue, because Miura more so has this grotesque dark fantasy style to his drawings, while Inoue and Boichi have this realistic, almost looking like straight up just pictures. Now, if you're curious to know Boichi's background in terms of drawing, let's just say it's a lot more scantily clad than you'd think. If you're really curious, let's just say it starts with the H and it rhymes with lie. Now, Ken as a protagonist is very strong. He's a lot more complex than you'd think, especially since he sort of gives the vibe of a musclehead. The other characters in the series, such as Teiso and other members of the gang, are very interesting, and they also are very complex and have their own side stories. The chemistry between the characters feels very real, and it's never boring when they're on panel, and if anything, I kind of look forward to seeing them, especially when there's some other characters that are kind of duds. The narrative through the first 160 chapters isn't necessarily a masterpiece, but it is very well written, and it shows the Korean underworld and even aspects such as the corrupt entertainment business very well. At times, the story does kind of deviate from being a gangster manga, and it kind of delves into other aspects of Korean society. So if you're going into this manga expecting solely Korean underworld chapters, you might be disappointed, but I recommend to stick through it because some of the arcs are very interesting and they do provide insight on a lot of things. The humor hits more often than not. The manga can be hilarious at times. There are times where I'll read panels multiple times because the jokes are so good. I don't think this could have been done if the characters were boring or if the characters were bad, because a lot of the time the gang members are the humor. They're hilarious. They make hilarious jokes, they make hilarious mistakes, and it's really funny to read. If you like fights, you're really gonna like this manga. Boichi's an amazing artist, as I mentioned previously, so fight scenes are well choreographed. It's not confusing when you're reading it. You completely understand where people are throwing punches, why they're throwing those punches. If you're a martial arts lover, it's not Baki level of fighting styles, but there are a few fighters in the manga who have their own specific styles, and it's really interesting to see. Also, a lot of the fights are used to sort of understand the mind of Ken, and specifically his mindset in terms of being a Korean boss. And it's really interesting because these fights don't just feel like, hey, I'm fighting you just to fight you. It feels like we're understanding more of Ken's character and why he's doing what he's doing and why he doesn't just kick things to the curb and live a normal civilian life. Okay, now we're gonna start getting into the things that I dislike. Most, if not all, of the female characters are complete duds. Similar to Gantz in this way, most of the female characters either want to smash Ken or use his eye candy. Yumin's character, which is Kitano Ken's main love interest in the story, wasn't as complex as I initially thought she would be, and her motivations were kind of dumb, especially towards the end. Her character pretty much boils down to being beautiful, being a cop, and having a certain secret that I won't spoil, but it's kind of, you could kind of see it coming. So some arcs, such as the idol arc to be specific, tend to drag on way too long. I think the idol arc gets some unfair criticism, especially for some of the themes that it tackles within it, but it's inarguably way too long. And I think the arc could have been a lot shorter, and it could have gone away with a lot of the eye candy slash sexual fillers scenes that were in it. Now on to the ending. The ending of Sun-KenRock was horrible. It's my biggest gripe with the series. The last 10 chapters are pretty much unreadable at times. It pretty much has it all in terms of bad endings, time skips, extremely rushed, a pointless betrayal scene that makes no sense, character deaths being pushed to the side without being addressed, and a deus ex machina that literally makes no sense. I understand the forgiveness theme the author was trying to contrast the redemption theme of the rest of the story with, and his reasonings for the ending, if you didn't know, the France bombing, is very touching, but the ending was rushed. If the author wanted to go down this route, he should have given the theme more time to develop and not 10 chapters. If you were to summarize the story at what happened at the end, it doesn't sound bad, but when you realize it happened over a span of 5 to 10 chapters, it feels like a complete mess. Towards the end, a lot of Ken's ideals, which had been previously established in previous arcs, were pretty much thrown out the window, and his reasoning for doing what he did in the final arc was, you guys are the bad guys, which kind of spat in the face of how he had approached fights previous in the arc. You'll see Ken mention a lot that the reason he's fighting is very important to him. He's not just going to fight someone just to fight them or just because he feels like it. If there's a reason, he's going to do it. But with the end of the arc, his reasoning was kind of dumb, especially since Ken was doing things that could be seen as evil in some people's eyes. Yes, it could be argued that they were necessary evils, but evils nonetheless. So to end this on a more positive note, I will say that Boichi definitely is not a bad writer, and I think the ending just suffered with being short on time. As I said, if the ending was handled with less time skips and given more chapters to fully develop, the ending could have been decent, if not even great. But sadly, we didn't get that. The 5 to 10 chapters at the end of the story was not good. Now, I'm not gonna give the manga a rating or anything. I'm not really good with those type of things. I will say I do recommend you do check out this manga. It is good, especially for the first 160 chapters. Just don't have too high of expectations for the ending. If you do, you will be disappointed, as I was. Nonetheless, I do think that this is a manga that would be amazing as an anime. I don't think that will happen, sadly, just because it's not as popular as other mangas out there, but the fights would be crazy to watch. The music would be insane. It would just be a joy to watch. That brings me to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, comment if you have anything else you'd like to add, or if you disagree with me, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And thanks. Peace.